A little over a decade ago, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria was at the height of its power in the Middle East. In the following 10 years, the central caliphate of the Islamic State was dismantled, its fighters were hunted down and eliminated, and the world tried to completely eradicate the ideology that gave rise to the jihadist proto-state. Overall, that massive global effort was successful. The Islamic State no longer controlled large territories in most parts of the world, while governments and their militaries were now focused on more immediate problems. But even though they lost their territory, the movement did not disappear completely. It went underground, repaired the damage from 2010, and prepared for a possible resurgence. The Islamic State of the 2020s takes a completely different form. The organization has expanded worldwide. It is online and has learned to use autonomous communication, cryptocurrencies, shell corporations, and more to grow in the shadows. The organization, once known to the world as ISIS, has become just a small part of a global network. Cells, franchises, and militant proto-states now exist with their own goals, but they coordinate and sometimes even fund each other's expansion. The current Islamic State is a reformed institution, built to thrive in a changing world. And even in Africa, Asia, or the Middle East, the new version of the Islamic State is gradually gaining territory. But before we begin, if you're new to our channel, make sure to subscribe so you'll always be updated with videos like this. The fronts, according to all our indications, the branch of the Islamic State in the country of Somalia, creatively called the Islamic State in Somalia, or for the purpose of this video, Somalia, is currently in a weak state. It is based in the autonomous state of Puntland in Somalia, located in the far eastern part of Somalia's territory, because Somalia has never been a serious threat to the stability of the country. After all, this group is almost powerless compared to other security threats in Somalia, especially the larger and more powerful jihadist force, Al-Shabaab. But from their hideouts in the mountains of remote Puntland, Somalia changed in the early years of the 2020s, and the Islamic State began to emerge. They took over several villages, seized profitable gold mines, and created other sources of income for their movement. But instead of expanding their territory further, they focused on becoming the center of the global Islamic State movement, creating complex transnational funding networks, producing propaganda for affiliates that could be posted worldwide, and even welcoming some of the highest-ranking Islamic State leaders from different parts of the world. In the high mountains of an autonomous and largely overlooked region in a country with bigger problems, Somalia was able to operate with relative safety. But starting in late 2024, Somalia came under relentless attack, not only from the military forces of the Puntland region, but also from successive airstrikes by United States forces. By the beginning of 2026, the Islamic State in Somalia had completely collapsed, and their former operational base was destroyed. Because of this, close observers of the global Islamic State movement were greatly surprised when Moroccan intelligence announced on March 25, 2026 that they had dismantled an IS Somalia terrorist cell in their territory. In cooperation with Spanish intelligence, Morocco discovered an IS Somalia cell operating from Tangier and Marrakesh. The group was involved in funding and logistical support for several branches of the Islamic State across Africa, including Somalia. But the brothers' ambitions went beyond that level. According to Moroccan intelligence, the cell was also planning an imminent attack, not in Morocco or anywhere in Africa, but in Spain, which gave a unique twist to their discovery. It was reported that the Somalia cell was cooperating with representatives from another branch of the Islamic State, the powerful Sahel Group, which operates in the Sahel region of Africa, south of the Sahara Desert. This is the latest sign of the growing ambitions of the IS branch, as the group shifts its focus from being a fighting force in Africa to the possibility of global operations. The unexpected discovery in Morocco was announced just one day after another unusual report, this time from the Africa Defense Forum. On March 24, the ADF released a report about the expansion of the Islamic State in Libya. Although Libya became a hotbed of Islamic State insurgency in the mid-2010s, many thought that the group had shifted its focus elsewhere. The Islamic State has been quiet in Libya for almost a decade. According to the ADF report, the Islamic State has rebuilt itself across the divided country, in areas controlled by Libya's internationally recognized government and in areas controlled by the powerful warlord Khalifa Haftar. According to the ADF, the Islamic State has established close ties with human trafficking networks throughout Libya that bring migrants from sub-Saharan Africa on the dangerous journey across the Mediterranean. In the southern part of Libya, particularly in the region called the Sun, the Islamic State has also established connections with transnational networks that stretch from war-torn Sudan to unstable Chad, and to the warring militaries in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. According to Adel Abdelkardi, a Libyan analyst at the Lebanese outlet Anaha, the Islamic State has long been waiting for this kind of opportunity in Libya. As tensions rise between the two opposing factions in Libya, Libyan intelligence has begun to encounter resurgent Islamic State cells more frequently. These cells first recruit fighters and send them to Somalia and the Sahel, then launder money and operate shell corporations posing as humanitarian groups. In August 2025, it was reported that Libyan intelligence dismantled a cell that had acquired mortars, anti-aircraft guns, large amounts of ammunition, and a cross-border financial network using cryptocurrency exchanges to transfer money. Following this, a third report emerged about the expansion of the Islamic State, this time from conflict analyst Puelich. This report was published by the Jamestown Foundation and highlights the growing presence of the Islamic State in northern Azerbaijan. According to Wojcik, the Islamic State is a recent arrival in Azerbaijan, and its branch was formally established there in 2020. However, in the past few months, Islamic State cells have been caught in the planning stages of several attacks, including a planned attack on the Israeli embassy in the capital, Baku. For the Islamic State, Azerbaijan is a particularly interesting place to establish a base for several reasons. The Islamic State branch in Azerbaijan was only recently established, according to reports. Wojcik says the Islamic State recently established a presence in Azerbaijan, making it a convenient base of operations to recruit potential fighters from across the entire Caucasus region. This is a place where jihadist ideology is known to be more common among Sunni Muslim communities compared to other Sunni communities around the world. From Morocco to Libya and Azerbaijan, all these reports show a worrying trend. Even though the Islamic State is not always in the global headlines, it continues to expand and is organized in its push into new areas. Oversight and opportunities. And now, let's go back to the global Islamic State. At this point, we want to make a statement that we think is not very controversial. If the global Islamic State organization is in an expansion phase, this is bad news for almost the entire world, except for the members of the Islamic State itself. Now, if the three examples we shared are the entirety of the evidence of the Islamic State's expansion, our conclusion might be an exaggeration if we think they are really expanding. After all, most of the Islamic State insurgents around the world are not based in Libya, Morocco, or Azerbaijan. And if their successes are limited while being pushed back in other places, our conclusion might be that the group's influence and power are diminishing. Unfortunately, that's not the case. To understand the bigger problem, let's focus on the Middle East, where a headline from the outlet War on the Rocks stated it most clearly. Islamic State containment is collapsing in Syria. According to War on the Rocks and several small but vocal groups of conflict analysts who have been trying to explain to the world for more than a year, the Islamic State gained a critical opportunity to act in Syria after the fall of the Assad regime in December 2024. To be clear, the new opportunity for the Islamic State is not an inevitability. This is the result of security lapses, flawed strategies, internal conflicts, and external interventions in post-Assad Syria that often disregard the security threat posed by the Islamic State. Most recently and most importantly, the new transitional leadership in Syria has nearly destroyed the autonomous Kurdish-led government that once ruled northeastern Syria. This decision has led to a long list of growing problems throughout Syria and the wider region. But the biggest problem is this. The Kurdish-led government and their paramilitary, the Syrian Democratic Forces, were tasked with controlling the large refugee camps that contained thousands of people. The Islamic State. When Damascus launched a military offensive to retake northeastern Syria, the Kurdish forces were unable to protect the camps, and despite limited intervention from the United States to transfer Islamic State detainees to Iraq, they remained mostly in the camps. Before the Syrian offensive, the largest camp in this area, known as Al-Hol, was home to around 24,000 people. Most of them were women and children with connections to the Islamic State. But when the Syrian Democratic Forces were forced to withdraw without being able to hand over proper administration to the incoming military, Al-Hol became the site of a mass escape. According to U.S. intelligence officials who spoke to the Wall Street Journal, thousands of family members of the Islamic State escaped from the camp and disappeared, leading American intelligence to conclude that as many as 20,000 former detainees may now be free throughout Syria. Quoting the journal, security experts have long warned that the wives of Islamic State fighters are effectively raising the next generation of militant fighters in the vast Al-Hol facility. To clarify, the story here is no longer simply that the transitional leadership of Syria allowed these people to go free. Whatever you may say about the current leadership in Damascus, and there is a lot that can be said, the former jihadists now leading Syria are truly furious at the Islamic State. Instead, it seems that the escapes are the result of complete mismanagement during the camp's transition. Damascus and the Syrian Democratic Forces are both blaming each other for the breakout. Either way, Islamic State loyalists escaped in Syria at a very bad time. From the perspective of other countries, it's clear that the organization has already taken advantage of the security vacuum caused by the collapse of the regime, as well as the political instability, sectarian infighting, and other problems surrounding the Syrian transition process. The Islamic State in Syria understands that if they use the security vacuum to seize territory, there is a high risk that Damascus and its many internal enemies will reunite to face an insurgent threat that they all deeply hate and will look for ways to cooperate against. Instead, the Islamic State is taking advantage of the fact that as long as they don't attract attention, the Syrian leadership is too preoccupied to pay attention to them. It would be even better if the United States also withdraws from Syria at the same time, and their withdrawal will likely proceed as planned, as long as the Islamic State does not give Washington a reason to change its mind. According to War on the Rocks, this creates a permissive environment for radicalization that the Islamic State can use to infiltrate state structures and rebuild their networks. Washington's mission against the Islamic State is ending at the very moment the group is ready to reemerge. The ongoing war in Iran and the chaos and instability in the Middle East are making the job of the Islamic State even easier. Meanwhile, in Africa, other Islamic State franchises are also expanding. The Islamic State's Sahel province is rapidly gaining power in Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and other Sahel countries where most global terrorism deaths are now occurring. The Sahel is not the most dangerous terror insurgency in the region. That frightening distinction belongs to Janim, an affiliate of Al-Qaeda. But Janim has created a level of chaos that allowed the Islamic State to expand its own operations and position itself as a more radical and more ruthless force against the local population who believe that Janim is not extreme enough. In January, the Islamic State West Africa province used drones and mortars to attack a major international airport in Niger, in an impressive display of the group's growing capabilities in Nigeria and neighboring countries. ISWAP fought military forces in larger and more intense battles, while also competing with another jihadist insurgency, Boko Haram. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, several eastern provinces were destabilized by an Islamic State-affiliated group called the Allied Democratic Forces. Although the Allied Democratic Forces have long been operating in large roaming bands in the country, they have become more aggressive in the past few months. In a notable attack, the group raided a Chinese-run gold mine. The Chinese nationals managing the site were told to flee for their safety, even as the war destabilizes the republic. There have also been calls to stop the operations of foreigners who are extracting their valuable natural resources. In addition, the outbreak of two major wars of some eastern states called destabilization and influence. Khorasan is active in Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan. If you've been following global politics in the past few months, you know that those two countries are currently at war. Since late February, there has been fighting in the border region between Pakistan and Afghanistan. In the Republic of some eastern state group, instead, the group is taking advantage of the instability. They are conduct operations, recruiting new members, and attracting defectors from the Pakistani Taliban and other insurgent groups who are looking for a more hardline movement. It's also important to note that it seems the group is ready to take advantage of the ongoing war in Iran. According to intelligence researcher Morgan Tadich for Atlantis, ISIS is taking advantage of this moment of regional instability for their own benefit. In particular, ISIS seems eager to attract a new state, calling the territory in the midst of chaos caused by the war in Iran and the security situation in Syria and Afghanistan. An eastern province is being destabilized by a group called the State, and it seems that the Islamic State is disappearing from the headlines, and this is by design. The Islamic State learned their lesson from their attempt to establish a caliphate in 2010, and now they have become a transcontinental insurgency that grows stronger while being ignored. But these are times of worldwide chaos, when governments, militaries, intelligence agencies, and media outlets are focused elsewhere. For them, the instability in some eastern provinces is their opportunity to destabilize a state. We can't provide a complete overview of the recent successes of the Islamic State as with coverage of the war in Iran. This is called destabilization. In the Republic of Ilang, the Islamic State has grown from its impulsive adolescent years into a mature, well-off, provincial, and extremely dangerous insurgency that fully understands its importance. Find out what's happening underwater by observing the occasional waves and ripples on the surface. But whatever news comes out about the Islamic State, the conclusion is the same. In some places, the Islamic State is growing stronger, expanding their provinces and building new cells in new areas focused on new targets. Worst of all, the organization knows that other countries are looking elsewhere. By the time that changes, the traces will have already been hidden, and any plans they develop during that time will be much harder to stop.